Good morning. So chilly morning out here, but I am going to set the last of the exterior doors into this opening. First thing you always do is to make sure your opening is properly sized. This is a 1/2 inch wider and a 1/2 inch taller than the door going in it, which is exactly what we want. I like to go ahead and wrap a little bit of this rubber window flashing tape around the edge. The bottom has been flashed, so we're very safe against water infiltration, first thing we think about. And then the first thing I do, and I'll show you a little closer here, is I set 3 screws. Now rather than using, used to use galvanized finish nails, I've been using these finished deck screws lately because they're nice, because as you're setting the door, if you need to adjust it with nails, it's a kind of a pain. These screws can come in and out. And they actually have a reverse helix on them too. So sometimes if you need to move a jamb out just a hair, you can use these screws. So it's a great tip. They work very well, and they really don't leave much more of an impression than the nail would. And inevitably you end up with hammer bangers on them, so you avoid all that. So follow along. Next step, I'm going to put the door in the opening, and then I'm going to check it for plumb. Now, the first thing you want to do is on your jamb side, and this is our jamb side here, I have went ahead and leveled this, and then the framing is actually good. If it's not, I normally take a series of shims and I get myself a level surface to start with, so that I know I can put that door in there and draw it against that level jamb. The door is partially, it's in the doorway. This side is still loose, okay? I haven't done anything with that, but this side is perfectly plumb, which we need. And what I'm doing now is those screws are tight, but you'll notice on these things, generally on each one of the hinges, there is a screw missing, and it's missing on purpose. They will give you some screws in the package. They're longer screws, and they're made to go all the way back into the framing. Just a hint, the ones I'm using here are stainless steel square heads, or you can do stainless steel hex heads. I don't like screws that are going to rust later. And those screws they give you are Phillips. They're hard to drive in without stripping the head. So I don't even try to use them anymore. I just bring my own screws and put the long screws in that way. So basically we're gonna take that baby. And what that does is that makes sure that these hinges, which hold all the way to the door, are secured all the way back into the framing. And so the jamb, which is nailed on the face, we're going to put a couple more screws in the jamb just to keep it stable, but you want the long screws in the hinges to really hold the door. Then the next thing we'll do is check our fits. Okay, so the next thing we do is check our fit here, and it's not too bad. Generally what you see is you'll have to close down there with some shims. One of the things that I'm looking at here is this opening was a little bigger, which I always leave my opens a little bigger, and then I can pack them down later. I'm going to go ahead and put a piece of 5/8 plywood in there, which I have here. And what that allows us to do, it make it much easier to shim it. When you see carpenters that have packed in those piles of shims in there, eventually those screws or nails are going to wobble loose later. So let's pack this thing out and get a little more firm fit. Yep, not all of it. And then what I've done is I've gone in 5 places and I put shims in. And what we're doing is we're getting to that alignment there, so that difference between the jamb and the door is even, top to bottom, middle. Get it all the way we want, and then we'll come back, we'll put some screws in that on each one where the shim pack is. Now, one thing to remember on shims, you never put one shim in, because shims are tapered. Okay, so you're putting opposing shims in with the tapers going opposite, so you end up with 2 parallel surfaces. If I only put one shim in, when I screw it down, what it's going to do, it is going to move the jamb to the angle of the shim, and we don't want that, right? So remember, whenever you use shims, you always use 2. And now I'm going to toss the screws in there. Okay, so I put the screws in place, and I actually try to hide them a little bit under the weather stripping. You don't have to. You can plug them in later, but so now our gap is very nice all the way. Our 5 screws are in this side, so the jamb side is held. The hinge side and the jamb side are held perfectly. One of the things I do now is with a multi-tool, don't leave these shims hanging out, because somebody will inevitably get poked with them. So I found out that is much easier than we used to strike them with a knife and crack them off, but this is much cleaner. And then so the last thing I'm going to do is go on the outside and nail screw, because I use screws now, screw the brick mold on the outside. Okay, so there's our final door. I went ahead and put some more finished screws into the the brick mold, so that's all secured. And one thing I'll just remind you that the brick mold is not supposed to be holding the door, and too many times people put doors in and depend on the brick mold to hold it. That's why doors get bad later. But anyways, shorten your list of regrets.